I haven't managed to. How are you?
I'm tired. I'm fucking tired today. Like just numb and just blurred. And I have been for days now. Just this real like.
So what are you on, the first still?
Yeah, we're in the first. It's 9 o'clock at night on the first.
Yeah.
So how is it
Correct.
there in the future? Tell me how the future looks.
Yeah. Not that, I mean, I'm doing this weird thing of like, because I'm trying to catch up on all these new bits and pieces of people going, oh, look, this is happening. It's like, yeah, I know, we've been saying it for nearly 10 years. I'm just looking at what they're going through. So there's that one that you just posted out with the girl doing a recap of a dude.
Yeah,
and she starts talking about like
the shit that she said. And I'm like,
yeah.
It's interesting because some of her shit that she called in August played out exactly.
It's also some of the terminology which I found interesting, because we've been talking about the bleaching of the sun with the UV, but that she started talking about hydrogen being stolen from the sun, which then turns it into a white dwarf, and I went, oh fuck.
And that's like there's little. That's what I wanted you to listen to, because I was like, there's something there. Because the one thing I've been saying all fucking year is I can't go out in the sunlight. My eyes hurt. Like literally, it physically hurts my eyes. And you go out in the sun and you're just like this instantly. And everyone else is like, no, it's always. I'm like, no,
it's like being in the snow.
It's like
being in the snow.
It's exact. So all the buildings here are made of limestone. So they're very pale colored. Like when I go on my roof to hang laundry, I have to, like, I come out and I'm blind. It's like being snow blind because there's buildings everywhere. You do. I feel like I need to have like wraparound Bono fucking glasses that like completely seal my eyes in.
Maybe that's why he's got them.
Yeah. Oh, fuck.
But the trip in talking about the hydrogen is, remember when I started discussing about like the biological transmutation, and then we started looking that silica can be broken down into carbon and oxygen. Well, you've got carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Okay, those are the three things.
Yeah.
You got carbon's the storage, hydrogen's the negative charge, and oxygen's the catalyst. Yeah. So without oxygen, nothing happens. Everything stays in stasis. Because oxygen is the literal catalyst for everything. Because you take oxygen, it's like even an explosion in a vacuum, like helium, hydrogen.
Yep.
You add a spark, no oxygen present, nothing happens. You put oxygen in, and holy Jesus Christ, right? But if the glaciers are melting and all the rest of it, and you've got carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, and you've got UVCs and all these things interacting with those components, and you've got people talking about hydrogen getting pulled out from another interactive body, I wonder if things are potentially getting more corrosive.
Well,
via the oxygen.
Do you remember you and I had this conversation like, I don't know, about a year and a half ago? And I was like, okay, so is the oxygen the antithesis? Like, is it the thing we've always been told, what do we breathe? We breathe oxygen. No, actually you don't. You breathe nitrogen and a little bit of oxygen. And I like, the oxygen levels getting too high because we're looking at hyperoxidization.
I took it a whole step further the other day in the process. You're actually breathing water. And that water, which is 90% of air, has 70% nitrogen. Nitrogen put into a vacuum becomes liquid. Liquid nitrogen then separates everything. So what your lungs are doing is pulling all the nutrients.
Say that again. Out. Liquid nitrogen separates everything.
Yeah, so if you get liquid nitrogen and you get like plant matter, right, and it's fresh plant matter, and you pour liquid nitrogen over it, it pulls all the water out and freeze dries it.
Oh, I hadn't thought of that.
So to get liquid nitrogen, you need pressure or a vacuum, which is what your lungs are. So they're condensing the nitrogen into liquid form. And then all the water we're breathing, because you can't see water unless it has a piece of particle to form a droplet around. Otherwise, it's just gas. So we're breathing water, and the liquid nitrogen is splitting it and pulling all the nutrient out.
Okay, so you want to know what's interesting? I watched, and this was years and years ago. Oh, it has to have been 18, 20 years ago, and it was a thing about premature babies. And this doctor came up with the idea. He says the reason they don't survive is that their lungs are not mature enough, but their lungs are already breathing water. So he took the babies, and when these new little teeny preemies, and submerged them in a water that was a highly oxygenated is the word they used. But
remember the movie The Abyss?
And they just breathed it, and in the abyss, when they
was based on that doctor's stuff. That movie, and the deep sea diving, flooding the lungs with oxygen rich
liquid, and letting the lungs, and there's the switchover moment, like the lungs took that switchover, and there was the panic, and everyone would go because
Yep.
But here's so the whole thing about the hydrogen thing keeps coming back to me, though.
Well,
why hydrogen is I know in my mind for 2.5 years.
Well, I know you don't like me doing this to it, but it's the easiest format for people to understand. Hydrogen is negative charge.
Yes.
Which is the feminine aspect of everything. Oxygen is the masculine. It's the catalyst.
Why do you have to do that?
Well, why? Because we've been given time frames, and the time frames that we've been given have been given different titles. So we've got patriarchal, matriarchal. Okay. We've got the dark ages, the light ages, or the gold ages and the dark age. They're all metaphorical stereotypes for what I'm going to say exactly the same thing. I'm going to say the feminine is the golden age, and I'm going to say the masculine is the dark age. But now, looking at all this information coming through, I'm starting to think that the light age has got absolutely nothing to do with like a physical thing at all in any way, shape or form. It's got to do with, well, in that talk that Thomas J. Brown was doing, one thing that he actually spoke, and I was like, oh, that is really interesting. Plants get smaller in a minimum.
Yes, and larger during the maximum.
But animals, I think he said, get bigger in the minimum and smaller in the maximum.
Okay, that's just interesting because just recently I literally, in the last 2 days, read an article about the fact that the sizes of babies being born are going up and up and up. And some people are trying to say, oh, well, better maternal nutrition and better.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no. And of course, you always have, some women have larger babies, some women have smaller babies. That's why it's called, there's a scale.
Yeah. Well, now add into the fact. But
that's interesting.
Well, now add into the fact that we've been talking about the KFC effect for some time, and especially young females, mainly because you notice things more on them. I remember when I went to school, girls didn't have boobies all the way through high school. Now, girls at 10 years old can have big boobies.
Yep.
And the other day I was like, oh, I wonder if this is that whole, like, we see, like, our minds are catching up. So we develop to our environment. So we've been pushed this whole, like, big boobies are better. So girls' minds have started developing this thing. And I know that, you know, bits and pieces on their body. I know that that's achievable because my body does it. You know, I don't work out. I look the way I do. I mean, I know I'm busy. I know I'm hectic. I know rah, rah, rah. But hang on, I'm then also starting to wonder whether it's literally got to do with what energy's coming in. Ergo, the golden age, because this is one thing he said. He goes, in the minimums, our technology goes up.
Okay.
So it was like, wow, he's like the Renaissance. They happened in a minimum, and this happened in a minimum. And you look at the 1980s, there was another bit of a dip in a minimum, and that's why the financial crisis 82, 83 happened. And then we had, like, I remember massive cyclones and shit in New Zealand that just absolutely smashed the place. And I'm like, oh, so then you've got these parallels where our intellect, our availability to imagination and intellect go up when there's more universe coming in, and it goes down when there's less universe coming in.
Less dampening effect of the magnetosphere? Like you know what I'm saying, like at a solar maximum, our magnetosphere our magnetic fields are like high. And right now our magnetic fields are like they're like a fucking soggy fish.
So you take the reason that they're low at the moment is because the sun is low. That's why. That's where we get our magnetics from. The sun gives us electric, or gives us energy, and the dielectric is magnetic, which is what's given out. Which is why the magnetics is not on Earth; it's out the magnetosphere, right? Yeah. That's how because that's where the Earth is showing its outer limits for where it's pushing that energy out to. So when the sun's not charging us, our magnetosphere goes down, and universe is pumping more energy in because, one, the sun's not, let's look at it as an inverter. It's not inverting as much.
Exactly. It's not,
and
I was going to say, like translating it.
Well, if you look at it as a, let's say, a solar inverter, you have your solar power, your panels, which then get heated and they create, and then it goes to an inverter, which then changes it to 240 or 120 or 110 volt, right?
Usable energy.
Yeah. So the sun is the solar panels for universe. So universe is pumping it with energy. It changes it and then sends that charge to us, and the Earth then puts it out as magnetics. But now the sun's gone down, so we're not getting as much charge. So we're getting more raw energy of universe unconverted, which means that Earth then has
literally,
to convert it.
Like quite literally now, like we're talking raw energy, like the UVC.
Yeah, exactly.
That video
and
was
all the rest,
third
and all the other ways.
Talking about UVC again is penetrating through the atmosphere and is hitting the ground. And holy shit, like no one is fucking talking about it.
Well,
but all of the waves, like it's like you say, it's the full spectrum.
Yep. And then you chuck in there what Thomas Brown was talking about, right? So he goes, and this for me was the clincher, and this is like, this is fucking it. This is fucking it. This is where our history, this is where everything gets fucking debunked and absolutely fucked with. And he started talking about them using static charge frequencies to charge seeds and fish roe. And that the seeds and the fish roe both reverted back to a more primal state of either plant or creature, right? Stronger, bigger, and everything, just through electric charge. So, for instance, they got a farmed trout, and they took the roe from it, and they charged it with electricity, and then they bred them up, and the fish grew into these, like, instead of a little trout like that, they were these fucking huge things, and their jawbones changed and everything, and they turned into a fish, actually, what he said. And I've looked at the studies, but they turned into fish that they thought were extinct.
Okay, so here, this was something that I watched like way years ago. I mean, so this would have been like 2011, back when I was still following like David Wilcock stuff. And he did a discussion It was based on one of his books. I can never remember which book it was. And he was talking about, it had a profound effect on me. Like, it was one of those moments where you, all of a sudden, everything becomes really clear. And you go, click, exactly. And he was talking about aluminum. And he was talking about how they send people, how the Chinese sent seeds up, out, and they wanted to see what solar radiation, what the cosmic rays would do. And when they brought those seeds back down, they grew like fucking, like zucchinis that were like 2.5 foot long, and like pumpkins that were like ginormous. And he said the Americans tried it and they had no effect. But all their equipment is made out of aluminum, which blocks the solar radiation. So then I was like, oh. So what if what you're saying, like, are you talking about this guy? No, with the Chinese, and I haven't followed it any further, so I have no idea if they've sent row up, or, do you know what I mean, like eggs or anything like that. But not an ethical experiment. It would not be an ethical experiment at all. But I'm going to send fertilized eggs up.
But D, they're already sending humans. They're already sending humans.
Well, this is why I said, like, back in 2014. And remember,
they released that.
Here's the thing, though. They put all this funding in. There was all this huge chunk of funding that was put aside for astronauts. For healthcare, right?
Yeah.
And I went digging. Like, I went wild. I spent weeks trying to pull out, like, what do they mean by healthcare? Because they keep using things like the special needs that, you know, and I was like, okay, but what do they need healthcare for? Like what are these symptoms that they're having? Because I'm looking for what reactions are they having to these cosmic rays? Like, are we talking psychological? Are we talking physical? So things like the big one they always kept using was the fact that it changes the shape of the eye. The cornea changes shape, and they come back, and a lot of them have eyesight issues, and sometimes it's not reversible. So so that you could say that's from not gravity, like the lack of gravity if they're up there and they're floating around, and that it could change the shape of the cornea. Okay.
And light and availability of light,
exactly. So, but you get little hints of, like, perhaps psychological type thing, and I'm like, but tell me what this is, and they could find nothing, like no papers, details that would really put it out on the table of what these were experiencing. Because I wanted to know, like, are we talking about space euphoria? Are we talking about, like, they get outside the magnetosphere and they have, like, profound moments where all of a sudden, you know, like, the universe makes sense to them and they get, like, almost like a space dementia type thing? But is that not a negative? It's the kind of shit that you and I would call a very positive experience. Be like, yeah, fucking, we'd pay money for that kind of experience here.
Yeah, or we have.
Oh, we have. So I've got questions when you talk about that, like the whole thing about the seeds in the reverting back in form.
Well, see, then you've got to chuck in there the Jerry Tennant stuff. So what Jerry Tennant, you know, he's the doctor who fucking basically fucking laser atomized some kind of virus, got a brain disease, fucking got twitches, couldn't work anymore, an oncologist. So decided that he was going to rebuild his fucking cells, and he went to all these specialists, and they were like, you've just got to make sure that the pH is right. And he's like, what the fuck is this pH bullshit? Like, what does that even mean? How do you change the pH in a cell? So he went and looked, and then he discovered that pH is a microvoltage. And at the center of every single at the center of every single cell is a microvoltage. But medicine and agriculture call it pH. What it is, it's parts of hydrogen. That's what pH is. It's plus or minus how many parts of hydrogen. Some places down here were supposed to be getting something like 10 to 15 degree increases.
Yeah, I saw that. Holy shit.
But most of the places that they were saying, 51 degrees are like places that normally get 51 degrees.
Oh, so
that was the only. That was kind of like, well,
So is that them just trying to push the global warming thing? Like, oh my God, it's going to be 51 degrees, but that's what time it always is this time of year.
Oh yeah, and it's global. What is it? Climate change deniers. This sort of denier, fucking that denier. I've just been following all these threads trying to figure out where people are coming from, and I'm just, Holocaust deniers, and it's like you've got the people who are being classified as the deniers, being told are sitting there saying no, you just got to read stuff. Like they're not even pushing anything. They're like, oh no, you just check some stuff. Look, here's a couple of links. They're not sitting there arguing, and all the ones that are like the Holocaust happened are like, how dare you, and this and that, and da 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 da, and then the deniers are going, can you find something that's not from a survivor or a Jewish media source, or and that's all they're saying, and everyone else, oh look, see, you're anti-Semitic, you neo-Nazis.
You're anti-Semitic, like, that's what it is, you're anti-Semitic, I know. Good morning, Anne, or I should say good evening, Anne. I've got so many sweaters on at the moment. I even have my favorite cashmere scarf on. I literally, wow. It's fucking cold.
I think it's colder in Malta than it is. Have you got what?
Maybe they should.
It's windy here. It's just really windy. Like it's just everything is windy and it's cold from it's coming like from Russia. It's like this cold wind. So when you're outside and you're in the sun, it's glorious. Like literally, I went to hang laundry yesterday and I ended up taking off 3 layers just while I was hanging laundry up. By the time I was done, I was in a tank top again because it's gorgeous outside. But the houses, because at nighttime it's going down to 5-6 degrees. So like the houses, you wake up in the morning, you're like, oh my God, my house is freezing.
That's colder than
yeah.
Have you started noticing that though? It's warm in the sun, but it's not warm out of the sun.
No, it's not warm out of the sun.
Like even just even the shade is cold.
Yep.
Wow. We've had a very strange. It's dropped to 8 degrees this evening. That's the coldest it's been so far.
Wow.
For ages. Yeah.
Wow.
It's been 11 most of the time. 11, 12. We've got pink cherry blossom in full blossom. We were up there now, and we've got blackberries are sprouting. I mean, they have produced flowers. That's really, really weird. That's months ahead of our.
No, it's not. It's not weird at all. It's absolutely not. There goes the fucking internet.
Yeah, your internet is fucking sucky again, dude.
It's not weird. So, me and Dee have just sort of been talking about all this bullshit that's been going on in universe, and I'm glad Dee's been like, but on all her posts, but wait, what about the electromagnetics? But wait, what about the universe? But wait, what about everything else that's coming in? And there's something else that Thomas Brown brought up, and the book is on its way, so I bought it straight away, but it's cosmological botany. So I've now got the biological transmutation, which is the charge of things transferring, which is like we've talked, these carbon and oxygen under pressure or whatever biological stress, it can change into silica, and silicon can be broken down into carbon and oxygen. But what this cosmological botany goes into, and you know how I've been sitting here this whole time going, we have to have known, like if we didn't have telescopes at a certain time, so let's say prehistory we had them, something fucking drastic happened, civilization got fucked up, we lost it. However, here in Australia and other places, they were able to map things by cosmology. But they could tell when there were sunspots and there were solar flares and things like this, but you can't see that shit with the naked eye. So this cosmological botany goes into the different ways plants present themselves under different stresses, frequencies, and solar alignments, to the point that the flowers, let's say on those blackberries, Anne, may change the shape of their flower from season. So right now we could actually take a photo of the flowers, have a look and compare them to, let's say, Venus, for instance. If they've got five petals, it's Venus. And the petals actually show what transit Venus was going through when they flowered. The same thing happens on leaves and all these different things. Yeah, man. So and this goes back to that other thing we were talking about, Dee, with charge and the fish row and seed reverting back to primitive form.
Tell Anne about that, because that's like seriously fucking interesting.
So they've been doing and this is from like for some time, but a lot of this and these ones are recent research. So the early 2000s, they were doing static charge treatments on fish roe and some forms of seed. So I think they used like maybe maize and wheat, and when they grew, the fish, the trout, reverted back to a thought to be extinct species, and the plants reverted back to their older, stronger versions of the grain. But what it's showing is charge actually dictates the format.
Charge changes, yeah. Okay, well that makes total sense. You know, how do we hang around so long if we didn't have other ways? You know, if our environment didn't adapt and show us what was happening, we wouldn't still be here, would we?
Yeah.
And exactly. it's like
but now we have.
Yeah. But now what, Ben?
Well, I was going to say it's quite interesting because, we now are starting, what it would look like is we're starting to have a link. So down here in Australia, there's a guy called Bruce Pascoe, and he's been going through all the colonial journals, and he's found that the Aborigines here in Australia, like they had whole villages, some made out of stone, some made out of wood, some made out of earth, some made out of this, that, the other. They had massive fish farms. They had hundreds of kilometers of wheat grain fields, fully plowed, fully nurtured, fully fucking like hundreds and hundreds of kilometers. The soil was so rich and silky that the colonialists couldn't ride their horses through it because they would sink straight into the soil. Okay. And yeah, like the description is you could run your hands through the soil like you were running it through someone's silk hair.
Wow.
Oh.
Ben, turn your camera back on again.
It's really weird. My computer.
I turned your camera off because you've been frozen for about 3-4 minutes.
Oh.
I was trying to see if we could
Okay, sweet.
Jump your camera into work.
Yeah.
There you go.
Sure. But what I'm starting to wonder is and this like, fuck this. Oh, I like talking to you guys because that's when it all starts coming in. So it can start looking like the specific things that we grew. So let's just go with potatoes in Ireland. I know that that's a stereotypical thing, but we know that they grew them. But they grew them around rocks. They didn't fucking grow them in fucking massive plowed fields. So what if those potatoes were grown actually for what they showed was going on cosmologically? The same with the wheat and the specific plants that we were actually farming. So like in America, right? So after, let's say, the meteorite hit the ice caps that were 2 miles thick, and that then bled off. So you've got this rich, fertile land because of all the glacial milk and all the minerals that have been crushed under those glaciers. So it's just going to be fertile lands. And the Americas are where even the Indians, not the American Indians, but the Asian Minor Indians got most of their spices from. All our goods, so all our melons, all our pumpkins, tomatoes, zucchinis, all our corn, all of it came from the Americas. All of it. Of it. So
and where does that come from, though? Because I've never heard that.
Fertile soil, in that, well, this is, where was it? I can't remember. I was watching a culinary history thing the other day, and it was of course. Europe didn't have tomatoes and pumpkins and stuff like that till like the 1800s. Not in the formats that we had. It's like it's really crazy. Chilies come from like South America, North America, those regions. That's where all that food comes from. Tobacco, all of it. So what happens if the charge there was presenting all this food, right? And that's what was being because the other side of everything that happens here is the northern hemisphere of the sun affects the northern hemisphere of the planet. The southern hemisphere affects the southern hemisphere. So where the sunspots happen, right, in the northern hemisphere, the weather happens in the northern hemisphere. And the spots and stuff that happen on the southern hemisphere of the sun affect us down here. And then you have the correlation of the planets. So Venus creates rain, Neptune creates rain, Jupiter creates winds, and all these different things. So then we're actually getting all these signals, and then we've actually got the plants that we worked with. Like, we didn't do what we do now where we've only got 8 apples and that's exactly it. We had 4,500 things, and each one of those, and someone had this specialty in each one of those plants, so they could actually cosmologically give you readings.
Tell you what's going on.
Direct, correlative, instant readings, because right now you've got blackberries flowering. That means something. It's not just like oh no, things are out of whack, blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay,
here's my
thing, planet that is actually speaking to Earth through this plant to us. That's literally what's going on.
Oh, here's the other thing, though. The other thing on this one, though.
I'll see if I can find it. Yep.
Okay, is because we keep talking about the ultraviolet light. And the light is coming in different frequencies now that we are not used to. Now, we can talk about grand solar minimums and all the rest of it. But it's very obvious, at least from our known history, that the light is coming in a way that we haven't seen before, at least in, like I said, what we have notated, right? So my question is if we're looking at ultraviolet spectrum coming in like the way it is, and we're looking at different cosmic particles, because this isn't the one-off. Like, this is your blackberries and your cherry trees, because this happened last year as well. And we had silly things like last year, your chooks were getting winter feathers in January, and you just said your ducks have heavy colds.
I'm pretty sure they're doing it again. Yeah.
Right. So.
But see, that's what that's what I'm sort of saying. Sorry. Keep going.
So when you talk about animals, and we talk about evolutionary tactics of animals, because I disagree with the whole thing with Darwin, and of course this whole thing, it took 10 million years for the animals to change to this. No. If the ultraviolet's coming in, and we look at your chooks as an example, those feathers are their protection. So as the ultraviolet is coming in like, boom, they're growing heavy, thick winter coats to protect themselves from the ultraviolet light that's coming in. Now, we've said the same thing with the dogs. We had things like last year, Moosh's dog, Sammy, now he's a shed dog. He sheds unbelievable all the time. But last year, she was like, at one point, it was like, he's growing this coat. And it's like, what the hell is he growing this coat for? It was like in early summer. He was actually like his fur was thickening up. And she was saying, okay, but now if we're talking about protective from the ultraviolet, the animals are doing it naturally. Now, I want to look.
The ones that can, actually, that's interesting, Dani, because the pink-nosed horses around our place all got terrible rashes on their noses last summer. They had to be taken out of the field.
We have to flip how we're looking at it.
Yeah.
Okay, so in what way do you mean that, Ben?
Okay, for starters, we're sitting here and we're looking at it as a reactionary thing, right?
Yeah.
Ergo, there's radiation coming in, so this is a protective layer. No.
Yep.
Is your guys' hair getting thicker at all, or getting thinner at all, or
no thicker? Fuck, holy shit!
Your receptors So more energy coming in, more receptors are being grown. Your silica body. Remember your silica body. We keep on thinking it as a crystal body. You've got it. Your hair is silica. It is crystal. It is the same as what quartz is. The density is different. That's what differentiates diamond from coal, right? Is its density. Nothing else. Still, they're both carbon.
Yeah.
So what if we have more energy coming in, therefore our receptors we get more receptors, therefore we have more access to this energy coming in. And like I said, Dee, when we start going into these minimums, more creative things start happening, more technology starts coming out. Now people go, oh, the technology comes out because, oh, there's a need for it now and we've got to quickly think about ways of, and it's like, yeah, but why weren't we thinking about that before?
Yeah.
The potential's always been there.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter whether it was hot or cold. No one's actually been really, doing stuff. They've just been arguing backwards and forwards and playing fucking table tennis. But in actuality, if you look at how quickly the technology is growing, regardless of what it is, it's growing. And it's growing exponentially fast. But what if it is just the energies? It is literally just the energies.
Okay, and that's
why the animals, that their receptors are growing bigger. It's not just that they're getting winter coats, it's they're growing a new type of coat so that their coating can keep up with their environment. And that's the adaptation. It's the same with, like, I've got this book called The Bone Readers, and these anthropologists that were trying to pin the decline and extinction of the megafauna in Australia to the Aboriginal peoples, and their burning, right? When they got here, they started burning everything, and therefore it wiped these things out. And it was like, these dudes were here 100,000 years before. Like, you're saying that the megafauna died out 30,000 years ago, and that's when but they were here 100,000 years before that.
Uh-huh.
And looked after the place immaculately until the white man got here, immaculately.
Yeah.
So and yet we still have wombats, we still have kangaroos, we still have those things. They're just smaller. So what if things didn't go extinct? They just
mutated,
what we would call mutated.
Yeah.
But it's not actually a mutation. It's just energy formatting.
Yeah.
That's literally all it is.
Well, and that's okay. So going back to the whole cosmic rays and the whole thing with the astronauts, right? This is been my question for years about these cosmic rays that are coming in, because we have no studies. We have no, and if there are any studies, they're certainly not sharing them with the public.
Might be in Chinese.
Yeah, exactly. We need someone who's Chinese who can go in and try and find these things, or Russian, right? Send Ihor, tell him to go find these things.
I did already, and he couldn't.
He couldn't, eh? So if we're looking at this kind of stuff, so like I said, the Chinese send their seeds up. They go out to some satellite out there. They spend X amount of time. They come back. They plant them. They fertilize them. They grow them, and they turn into these monstrous, huge, 2-foot-long zucchinis, etc. If we're looking at this kind of stuff, so we have so many things coming in right now. In the magnetic field, and we're talking about the relationship between the electric and the magnetic, right? But with all this stuff coming in, I'm still looking at our own fields. How are our own fields reacting to these changes, i.e. electrical fields, magnetic fields within our body? They're reacting, and we're seeing physical symptoms. Now, my question is, and going back to what you were just saying, Ben, are we looking at physical symptoms that are symptoms showing a negative impact, or are they physical symptoms of something that is because we are mutating? We are mutating and changing with this, what's going on, the same way that we've seen the animals do.
Well, I'd say that then that comes down to your perspective. Yeah. Okay, hang on. Then it just comes down to perspective. So, like I keep on bringing up sort of masculine, feminine, gold, dark, fucking light, dark, whatever, ages, yada, yada. It's like everything happens energetically first. Everything.
Yeah.
Right? And then it's converted. So any pain, any anguish, whether it's mental or physical or whatever, is always energetic first, whether it's internally or not. So there's who have I been looking at recently?
The homeopathic word for disease is dis/ease. It shows up as a change in the frequency, which then obviously shows up as a change in the pathology, in the physical morphology of the person.
So there's these, you know how I was talking about there were the clairvoyant physicists / clairvoyant biologists that were remote viewing like hydrogen in action, and they were viewing different compounds in action. So rather than capturing like hydrogen and looking at it under a microscope and going, oh, look, that's it, they were like sneakily fucking astral traveling to go and look at it, and then they'd come back and draw these designs, right? And this was like from 1860 to 1930, 1940, 1950, right? And I've got the books on these. So I've got the books that these dudes wrote, and these guys traveled around the world working for the church and governments all over the place doing stuff, okay? Now, lot of their stuff that they came out with has since been proven by quantum physics, right?
Yeah.
But there's these other people that we're using, and this is where homeopathy comes in. This is where the part that I was talking about, this stuff, I was like, oh, this is fucking cool. But these chemistry doctors, right? We're using silver nitrate and gold oxide, I think it was, or unless there is a gold nitrate, but I'm not sure. But either way, what they were doing is they were putting these into what do you call them? Dipping paper, you know, like a chemistry grade sort of,
like a litmus paper,
pH stuff, but blotting paper. That's the word.
Yeah.
And what they do is they'd do tests during the day and during the night, and then they'd test it against full moons and new moons and stuff. And the silver nitrate used to rise in the paper as the sun was going full, as the moon was going full, and it would sink, right, as the moon was waning. And the gold would react with the sun. And they actually got to the point where the gold substance that they were using became almost completely unreactive at all. And then I think it was the Homeopathic Society, the International Homeopathic Society, got into these huge discussions of whether they should be using any gold treatments for anything, because the sun and its interaction with the gold had like become inert under what these tests that they were doing. And this was under, I think it was going into a solar minimum.
When was that, Ben?
Like time frame?
Oh, I'm going to have to go and check the docos. I think it was like the 1920s, 30s. It might have been a little bit earlier. It might have been the very end of the 1800s. But I was like, holy cow.
I think it's more likely the 1920s.
Because what it's showing is these other... Yeah, well, there's the Great Depression. So, and what you've got to remember is these markers. So all our financial falls have also been at the same time that massive weather events have happened at the same time, and they're all correlated. There's a guy called... Oh, sorry. Go.
Hold on, let him get in here.
I know. It's just a quick quiz. In homeopathy, gold, the homeopathic, the picture of gold as a homeopathic remedy on the mental emotional level is all about, obviously, gold is number one, and it's a currency, it's a high achiever, it's a monetary value, it's incorruptible. And the Great Depression would have aggravated all the gold personality types who would have lost, that they would have come into their pathology around that time, because they lost a great deal of money, a lot of them. So sorry, in homeopathic terms, that would have been a time that gold was aggravated.
Interesting.
Mm.
And you're saying solar
they're all
mineral.
correlated. There's this guy called So over the next 4 years, there's going to not only be weather anomalies like no one's ever seen. There's going to be financial woes and turmoil like nobody's ever seen starting this year. And that's dictated by the planets, not by any mumbo jumbo or Nasara Act or Trump or anything like that. This is this is what is going to happen. Universe is basically like, we're noticing it in crop yields across the globe. It's crazy.
And that's
this is all, and this stuff is all based on. Well, that's the flux. So you get.
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's all right.
Go ahead, Anne.
Okay, I just wanted to ask you, would you mind backtracking to the connection between the cosmology, the botanical cosmology thing? How did they actually, connect? How did they make that connection between
that's
particular? How did they know that? How did that happen?
Well, I mean, see, okay, so for every topic, we have to then go and we have to take our perspective and put it into context first. So let's say prehistory, we had telescopes and all that kind of stuff. But then prehistory, what's said is that the sky was created as a map of here.
Okay, I'm sort of tying it into that post about the forest. Sorry, Ben.
Say that again. And what did you just say? I missed what you said.
I'm sorry. I'm seeing this all as kind of fractals, I suppose you could nearly say. Ben put up a post the other day about the forest, about how trees will divert nutrients to each other. So there's this living entity, which is the forest, and it's like this is it feels almost like an extension of this.
Well, so the way that I would is like you have energy first, and I call energy as a grand thing universe. So then universe, it's not a fractal at all because it's instant. It's not like a lapse. It's not like seasonal. We're thinking of it all as seasonal.
You're thinking of it. It's a constant.
Yeah. So then you've got planes, right, which are your energy grids. So let's say, and naturally they are longitudinal. See how good I'm getting with these words, Steve? And that's that energy that, like with Joe, that's that energy with like Joe, that's the energy Tesla, that's the energy Schauberger, Maxwell, Keeley, all those dudes were all tapping in Dollard. That's what Dollard's registering through his things, is that the grand plane, the longitudinal energies, which are instant. And then you have these latitudinal energies in which like the current AC, DC, AC electrical grid functions on, right?
Okay, so I want to ask a question.
Latitudinal.
I want to ask a question Because and maybe it's completely stupid. Okay, when we're talking about energy, we talk about like the positive and the negative. So like positive charged ions, negative charged ions, etc., etc. Is there anything that shows that perhaps that the longitudinal would be, oh look, we got an extra 40-minute time has been removed off of again, so we can continue talking. Yeah, we have unlimited minutes. Yes, okay. That longitudinal lines of energy would have perhaps been the negative ion, the negatively charged energy, and that the you've talked about like the making of the gradicle, right? Where all of a sudden they cross it over. And is that the positively charged that has overpowered the negatively charged, and it's been what's created the grid structure, those points?
Well, so,
I'm just trying to kind of put a visual into it.
Yeah. Well, it's so you've got so you have the material realm in which we're in is like the mushroom to the mycelium.
Yeah.
So the mushroom isn't the plant; it's the fruit. So it's like you've got the mango tree. Mango's the fruit, but the tree is the fruit of the longitudinal energy.
Okay.
Right, and the natural latitudinal or waveforms coming through, universe coming through. So let's just go with levity has always been, because everything's going like this. It's not going like this. It's not going into a center point. It's coming out of somewhere. So levity's always been.
Your video is frozen, so if you're giving us like gestures, we can't see you.
I was gonna say they went out of the screen anyway, so it's that big. So and that's what I'm looking at now is like levity's always been, which is a big fucking call. But the fact of the matter is, to have gravity, you need mass. To have mass, something has to push something out. Otherwise, you only have gravity. Everything's getting sucked into that point. So what creates mass? Something has to create mass.
Isn't that the age-old question?
And energy is energy is everything. It just needs something to convert it. So then all you have is not one source of energy. You have multiple sources of energy that are intersecting. And it's that, like I said, like we've said, the intersections are those energy forms or the wavelengths, which of course aren't linear. They're not like that. They're like that. And then you have two of those coming into each other, which creates a rope. And there's your weaving, which I know gets sort of like, it gets weird, but that's just what the fuck is going on. And then in each one of those intersections, you have more and more powerful ones. So you have water forms, which is the coalescence of hydrogen and oxygen. It's the first element and the catalyst joined, which is why they're fluid and clear, because they shouldn't. One ignites the other. Yeah, D?
Yeah.
Hydrogen is highly flammable when oxygen is present. Why doesn't water explode?
Yeah.
Because it's magnetic. You have the positive and the negative. They just join. So with the answer to your question, to get out of my fucking blah blah philosophy thing, is negative is only negative when it needs to be, because positive's there. So they do this flip thing constantly. And what I'm thinking is by charging a latitudinal thing, even if it was only radionic. So let's just say that the powers that be have this secret table. It's got gold legs. It's got a silver top. It's solid silver top. And in it, they've got the longitudinal lines mapped out on it, and they've gone and put their latitudinal lines. That is a fucking powerful as fuck radionics table. And with radio, here goes the internet. And then with radionics, you have the ability to set up a phase, a play, a charge on that grid, and walk away, and it will do it.
Okay, so just backing up.
The more you forget about it, the more. Hang on, just a sec, because the more you forget about it, the stronger it gets. So the original person or entity that put it in place, if the less pieces they leave, the more confused the group they leave, the stronger whatever they put in place is going to be. Holy shit.
Holy shit. Okay, so
think about how massive that is.
Oh, absolutely. But I'm trying to
think about how massive that is. If I want to create the most ultimate thing, I want it to be as many generations so that they get as confused as fuck, because my original intention of setting up the field on that thing is going to be more powerful. The more people focus on everything other than what I established that thing for, the stronger it's going to get. So let's just say Ahriman created this thing.
Okay, well, also these things, and if we're going to talk about the tabletop and the longitudinal and latitudinal lines, etc., then we look at things like, for example, Stonehenge and pyramids and massive waterfalls and geysers and all these different things, and it's the same kind of thing. If we forget is that my assumption? I've just jumped to is the fact of, like, if we forget what they're for, then the intent of what they're for becomes stronger. The more the less we observe what that intent is.
Well, what I would postulate is that things like Stonehenge and the likes are older than the gradical, and that the longitudinal lines that exist on that gradical are mapped out because of the existence of those sites.
But
so the
latitudinal. Do you know what I'm saying?
But what I'm sort of but what I'm sort of getting at is, because they're pre-gradical, that they were actually set up to be visited and charged, and that's why ceremony took place, and that's why they were able to sell heaps of us off as nomadic and wanderers, but we weren't. We had villages, and at certain times we'd go to these spots to charge them again, to remind universe that we were here, and that our intention was true. Because at the moment we're so flippant, like, people don't write stuff down, and if they do write stuff down, then they don't get rid of the old one. So universe is going, well, what the fuck do you want? You've got these sites, and you're no longer telling me. You're wearing shoes. I don't know how much of you there is. None of you are weighed and measured by me. You're all weighed and measured by the system in place. And therefore becoming more and more oblivious to universe, because she doesn't know. Because it's all connected unless you insulate it.
Okay, so I got a question. I want to throw something on the table here. You may have sidetracked me, so now I got to try and remember. I got to reformulate what I was thinking. As water is a magnetic, the idea of water
being the most magnetic thing we know.
Right. We're talking about the changes in water, and we've been talking for a year and a half now about charging water. Right? Like that's something that subject just keeps coming back about the charging of the water.
Yeah.
So as
strong water and all that stuff. Yeah.
If the magnetics right now of the planet are very weak, or the magnetic field, not magnetics, but the magnetic field is very, very weak right now, as we're in the solar minimum, and we have all this extra energy coming back in. Oh, how can I say this? We see the changes in the water.
Different states of water.
Well, this is it. I was like, is the water being charged by these cosmic rays? in being changed.
Yes.
But
it can be.
For sure.
What were you going to say, Anne?
Well, I was going to say the water responds to intention. So I would have a question about it being charged for sure. I think that's absolutely a possibility, but it's not an absolute certainty.
I'm gonna go with it's a 100% absolute certainty, because that's what water is. So we're now potentially noticing different states of water, for sure, because they're becoming more. They're presenting themselves. They're reaching capacity and showing themselves, and then we're able to see them. But water, like with what Joe says, is he'll instantly. He's like, water is the most magnetic thing that we know. It's like, that's why dowsers and whatnot can walk and detect water. It doesn't matter how deep it is. They've just got to be good and connected. Yep. You can't detect other things, like the military can't even detect stuff like to that capacity, to that, simplicity, let's say. And like when you look at what Schauberger says about the importance of water, and the foundational stipulations that he makes about it, like 4 degrees. 4 degrees is water's prime. Anything above that, it starts dying. It starts letting other influences in. So what we have is you have water, if kept in its prime, stays in its prime. So in that aspect, and yes, you've got water has the ability to stay water, but then what is water, right? Yeah. So to Schauberger, water was 4 degrees. It was flowing. It was fluid. It, all those things. It meandered. It always rolled in on itself. It always had warm to cold points, but it always changed. So that it always stayed in stasis. But the minute that you take it out of its stasis, then things start happening. And then, of course, everything was a plug-in to, and everything then was a plug-in to that. So the water cycle, you had your minimum water cycle and your maximum water cycle. And we basically only ever have minimum water cycles now. There aren't any maximum or full water cycles anymore. It's much the same as we have immature water and we have mature water. Okay, and the most mature water would essentially be seawater, and the most.
But then I question the fact if we are seeing minimum cycles and we don't have maximum cycles anymore, is that being caused by the solar minimum, i.e. the magnetic fields have lessened so much? Is that what's causing the water to be in that state as a magnetic body?
In its levitative state. Well, it's getting more levitative. It's getting looser. That's why we're losing water. That science will say it's evaporating, but it's not. It's becoming finer. It's becoming less dense. That's what the UVCs and stuff are doing. Is they're splitting it. So remember, you can only see water as it coalesces around a particle. So go back. We breathe water, D.
Yep.
We breathe water. Air is less dense water, and then the nitrogen that we condense in our lungs turns to a liquid, splits off all the other bits and pieces. We breathe out CO2, which is probably the water, the actual water, and then the mineral left in us.
Okay, so here's the thing, though. Going back to physical, the physical shit that we're seeing, right? So right now, I've talked to everyone. Everyone's talking about their skin is so dry. Not dry, lack of oil, dry, dehydrated. We talked about it last summer. This feeling of, and Philip, I talked to Philip about it, this feeling of intense dehydration. I am drinking right now ludicrous amounts of water. Like, I am so dehydrated. I'm just drinking all the water I can. doesn't make a lick of difference how much you drink. And I know all about electrolyte balances and all the rest of it, so I'm very aware of these kind of things, and I make sure that, you're taking it in at the right levels, etc. Skin is showing extreme signs of dehydration, regardless of what you put on your skin, regardless of how much water you're drinking and how good a quality the water is that you're drinking. Okay, so if we're talking again, magnetically speaking, if the water is changing, our bodies are made up of water.
Well,
so our cells, and we look at the interstitium, right? The interstitium, the membranes now that we talked about last week, right? If all of these things are being affected, how can I say that again?
Oh, what's happening to the carbon?
Sorry, say again?
What's happening to the carbon?
Yeah, well, what's happening to the carbon?
If skin's drying out, right, and you've got UVCs coming down and I haven't done a lot on it, but the stuff that I have has been scientists. But if the UV, from what my understanding is the reason the glaciers, for instance, are melting is because the old carbon, or what I'd say is the carbon under pressure that is stored in the glaciers, which is why they're that dark fucking green kind of colours, because of the fucking carbons that have been stored in them, right? Locked up.
Right.
Happy New Year, Nick.
Oi.
Oi.
Well, and we're made up of water, or hydrogen, oxygen, and carbon. Which is what we're made up of. What if the UVC are going into the like pulling the carbons out as well, which is where your skin's drying out. See, it's pulling hydrogen out of the water that's in you, which is why you're wanting to drink water.
Leaving behind a shit ton of oxygen.
The construct of your actual skin.
Right? So we go back to this, what we were talking about
at the beginning.
We talk about oxidative stress, oxidation on all levels. So we're seeing rust. We're seeing in the physical, right? Like oxidation of the skin cells. We're seeing oxidation of the internal organs, right? So,
well, it
comes back to this thing what I said a year and a half ago. It's like too much oxygen. Too much fucking oxygen. Everyone's talking about O2, CO2 levels, blah, blah, blah.
So now, exactly. So what happens if oxygen levels get too high and a spark happens?
Oh. And that's what we're seeing right now. That's what we're seeing right now. No, okay, because now you're talking about things like
reduce. Oh, hang on.
The forest fires, the fucking transformers.
Oh fuck!
All these things.
Oh fuck! What did I say at the beginning? What are the three building blocks? Carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen.
Oxygen and nitrogen.
Yeah, so you have. Well, no, nitrogen's a component, but the three building blocks for all biological life are hydrogen, carbon, and oxygen.
Yeah.
Hydrogen locks up oxygen and becomes water. Carbon locks up oxygen and becomes CO2. They both make the oxygens almost inert by becoming another compound. If the hydrogen's taken out, you have oxygen. If you take the carbon out, you have oxygen. So if I get you to save water and reduce carbon, what am I going to leave you? Massive amounts of oxygen. All I have to do is add a spark to certain places, and you have what? Fire. And or rust.
And or explosions and or...
But remembering rust is fire. Rust is just a slow formatted fire. They're both oxidation. O2. which is ozone.
Okay. Interesting.
Sorry, ozone is O3. O3.
O3.
Okay, so Ihor was saying yesterday that there's been an epidemic of respiratory problems in
RSV. RVS, RSV. Yep.
I'm not actually sure. Anyway, kindergartens have been shut down, schools have been shut down all over Moscow, and I think they reckoned they thought it was something contagious. But I've also seen on the homeopaths pages from the UK, they're seeing outbreaks of something that they're saying is contagious, but it's also a respiratory thing. So I'm just thinking, if we're how this will possibly affect what we're breathing is going to affect how we, how we deal with it.
Oxidization of the lungs?
Somehow the lungs not able to cope with what's coming. Somehow, perhaps.
Okay, so if you're talking about oxidize, okay, well, I'm going to go back to the whole thing of basically the C60, which is an oxidized, it's a scavenger, a free radical scavenger, and oxygen scavenger. And again, we're talking about.
I have a theory. I have a theory on C60. I have a theory on C60. I think I know what it is.
You don't even know what it is?
So water. No. I think I know exactly what C60 is.
Okay, go ahead, hit me.
So what water is as a molecule is a bunch of pentagons and hexagons joined up in lattice long chain.
Yeah.
If you fold them up, they can create certain types of waters, create icosahedrons.
Yeah, they do. So
what I think that, and are you ready for this? Because this is fucking crazy. But I think that, hang on, the internet's going. I think that C60 is the water molecule lattice under charge turned into carbon.
So the water molecule under charge
is the perfect shape. That is why. Well, once you pyrolyze and then carbonize, and then arc it, which is what they're doing. They arc graphite, and
which you could also say charging it.
It has got fullerene. Well, they are charging it. Yeah, they're running an arc through it.
Exactly.
And the exfoliation off of that has fullerenes in it, that being C60, C70, right?
Yeah.
But I think that C60 is literally the exfoliate of the water molecule. And that is why C60 holds hydrogen. Because if you laid it out and put a different static charge into it, it would probably turn into water.
Now,
so it is an inert water molecule.
But you cannot, for lack of a better word, dissolve C60 into water. It cannot be emulsified into water, right?
It
can't be.
No, it clumps because of the charge.
Yeah, because of the charge. It just clumps together in mass, and not only that, it falls out.
Discharges, wouldn't you? Somehow.
Would that go into positive and negative charges?
It would coalesce all into one because what the water will be doing is pushing all of that into one spot because it's inert, it's neutral. And to balance that out, it just has to push it into one space so that the water can exist all around it, whereas the oil doesn't have water in it, which is why you can suspend the C60.
Okay, so maybe we need our friend to do some experiments with C60 in water and putting a charge to it.
He's already done stuff. Carbon ribbons, when the correct charge is applied to them, gets up and starts moving.
Yep.
And you've just possibly seen the latest meme on Facebook where they're taking nanotubes and putting it into a solution, and they've got a Tesla coil pointed at it, and they're like, look at this. So what that carbon's doing, Anne, is it's just following the streams of energy that coil is pushing out. It's just, the carbon's just showing you where the strongest line of energy is.
Okay. So did you say that the nanoparticles formed tubes?
It can form tubes.
Can form
tubes.
So what graphene is nanotubes at a singular cell
layer
format. The reason that they're not able to make massive things yet out of graphene is because they haven't been able to exfoliate a large enough sheet. So like potentially Carl and I on my table here with a little altmeter, we're able to get potentially one of the biggest sheets of nanotubes off of doing electrolysis in solution on hemp stalk.
Yep.
We got like a highly visible see-through sheet, and Carl was like, holy fuck, what just happened? He's like, that is massive. They're only getting like little like stuff under microscope. So if you carbonize something in the correct fashion, that carbon becomes highly conductive. So when presented an electrical field or an electrical field, not a magnetic field, because it's inert. So it will coalesce in the highest charged area because it's conductive. Much the same as like a magnet will stick to metal, but it won't stick to stainless steel. So if it sticks to what you're told is stainless steel, it ain't stainless fucking steel, because it's got too much carbon in the steel, and the magnet is sticking to the carbon, which is why some stainless steels rust, because the carbon is discharging via the steel with oxygen.
Dani, are you okay?
I'm all of a sudden just like, wow.
You just go back.
Whacked, like sideways. I'm struggling to pay attention now. I'm just like,
I can see that. I can see that. Something happened a couple of seconds ago there.
Yeah. And I just was like, whoa, wait, we were talking graphene and now we're talking stainless steel, and I lost the conversation between the two.
Yeah.
Well, you know, my stasis is basically, I think that carbon is an inert form that coalesces under energy formats, and I think that biology that is created through the same sort of process, and the intersections of energy formats learnt to coalesce into carbon, and then our consciousness was like, sweet.
Yeah, sweet. Yeah. I love your terminology. You're so scientific sometimes.
Well,
are you going to be around tomorrow night?
I'm starting. Yeah.
Good.
I'm starting to believe that our bodies are basically one gigantic, essentially like a fungi. The body, not the consciousness, but the body. When you look at its makeup and the way that the endocrine systems work and all that kind of stuff is like the biological makeup of our body is, it's very interesting. It basically mimics the earth, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Listen, tomorrow night I want to get into that, and I know you haven't had a chance to watch the video yet, Ben and I were talking about it as soon as he got on. The one that I posted. Ron Newman actually posted it in the Unfuckers, and he put the actual write-up that the woman had. Her name is Laura. Fuck, her name, last name. It's short last name. Maybe Laura West, Laura Adam, Laura. It's a very, very short last name. So he put a piece in about it, and then there's a huge, like, you can click read more, and there's what she wrote up about all the information of what's going on right now with all the stuff. I want to get into a bit of that tomorrow, because like there's some seriously wild shit happening right now that's just like, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
When she started talking about the colors, you see in the video, she starts talking about the colors in the sky, like the iron oxides and the oxygen, and
iron oxide.
Like, yep. This is what this is.
And the sprites.
But
sprites.
Someone else brought that up. Where was that?
The one that Dee's talking about is. Yeah.
What did I watch just recently? Oh, okay, Ben, was it one of the ones that I sent to you? Because it brought up the sprites, and it brought up certain
I think
atmospheric. Oh, here's the other one that got me.
I don't know anymore.
The article that I did this week, before, whatever. I spent all day compiling all the information about everything that's been going on over the last week or so. The article about Antarctica and the noctilucent clouds.
Oh,
I didn't say that right. The noctiluminescent, whatever. The colorful, shiny clouds.
Yeah.
It was really interesting because it's just a little piece in the article. If you go read the whole article, the little piece when he says, you might not think that these colorful clouds are directly correlated to weather patterns on the other side of the world, and yet we can track where these clouds are directly. And I'm like, okay, again, going into the whole thing about the colors, the magnetics, all these frequencies that are coming in, and they're tying it, and they're lining up and figuring out where this is taking place. And it's like all the shit we're getting with Antarctica, neutrinos blasting out of Antarctica, the noctilucent clouds that are supposed to only last 5 to 10 days. Oh, but they've been studying them for 4 weeks this year. 4 weeks, not 5 to 10 days, right? And the cloud expanded until it pretty much covered all of Antarctica over 4 weeks. These, again, and going into the whole magnetic stuff again. Some interesting fucking shit in here. There's some interesting fucking shit. But I have to go to bed. I actually now lay down.
Yeah. Also, Goethean chromatography and color spectrometry, which is really interesting. It goes into this cosmological botany stuff, which is quite cool. So I'm going to get that, where they actually Goethe was like, oh, Newton, what have you said? Okay, let's try it. Oh, you're full of shit. And then they came up with these other things, which are far more useful and correct.
Yeah. Far more useful and correct.
So yeah.
And Dani, something's been really bugging me about the whole thing going back again for the homeopathics on the North and South Pole, the provings, and that is there something we can play with? Is there something we can do to create a balance between the two?
Yeah.
To bring balance. Like, is it a matter of like taking both? Do we have to know what?
No,
I'm just wondering, like, there's something to that, and it's really knocking on my head again.
You know how we were talking about pains and aches and mental stability and stuff right at the beginning? Yeah. Like, they all are coming from energetic points. So it's like the way that I sort of see those provings have got the symptoms, right? And then each planet has a connection to an element or a metal, and then each one has a connection to a plant, and then they each have a connection to a body part. In alchemy, that's so, and that's the funny thing is like when you start noticing liver problems, and I can't remember which one it is, but let's say Jupiter is fucking ascending or whatever, that is potentially why. And then what you'd take is your liver tonic or your liver homeopathic and because that's the energy it needs to give it the boost to get through those peaks and troughs and flows.
So what's Mercury in retrograde all about? Somebody find the physical energy center for that one, because the next time Mercury is in retrograde, I need to cover my whole house in that.
What was
interesting?
I can't remember what body part it is. Do you know, Anne?
Well, in homeopathy, Mercury has a lot to do. It's one of the most syphilitic remedies. So it's all about degenerative disease, destruction at a deep level. The end point is syphilis, of course, is mental derangement.
Brain.
So on a very superficial level, it's all about the mouth. Merxol, for instance, is one of the biggest mouth remedies for tooth decay, pain, for septic throats, or anything to do with expression is Mercury, of course. It has to do with instability as well. The Mercury moves; it's hard to hold the temperature. So somebody who's a Mercury is unstable on all levels. Very unstable character, very unstable in terms of their ability to hold a pattern of symptoms, etc., etc. It's a huge the Mercs, there are many, many Mercury salts. Merxol is probably the best known, but there's about 15 of them.
Interesting.
Yeah. Very, very great remedies. Now, you could antidote that, actually. You could find them from a homeopathic perspective.
Lungs. Mercury is the lungs.
That's interesting, because in homeopathy, it hardly affects the lungs at all.
And your thyroid. Lungs and thyroid.
The thyroid makes sense.
And it is, and Mercury is Mercury, of course, which is the ankh with the horns.
The what?
The ankh.
The ankh, so the circle with the cross, with the horn. So it's the moon, the sun, and what's the cross? It's cross Earth. Yeah, I wonder. Oh, the cross is the plane. Yeah, interesting. So yeah, it's all of them: spirit, mind, and body. So, and the retrograde is just that thing where it looks to us where it goes like that, D. It looks like it's going like that, like back and forward, whereas in actuality, what we're saying. Oh, okay.
Your video's frozen, so we can't see. All your fancy motions are lost on us.
It's just that whole how's this one?
We can't see you.
Does this work like that?
No, you're just black. Now you're back.
So the retrograde is when it looks like it just goes like this. When in actuality it's going like that.
You're frozen.
Okay. Well, the spin disappears. It looks like it does something. It's going backwards, whereas it's not.
Yeah.
So I think more so what it is when it's in retrograde. Let's say it's behind the sun, so then it has less effect as opposed to a direct effect. And then when it's in front of the sun, it has full effect because it's charged. So it has no charge and it's influencing the sun, and the sun's washing it out, right? It's doing its inversion, and then it comes in front and it becomes the lens for the sun's energy. So it becomes more so.
Dani, you have to go to bed.
Yep, I have to go to bed.
Yeah, we'll do.
I would love to keep
do
talking
this again tomorrow.
Yeah. I'd love to keep talking, but no, I actually have to go lay down and go to bed. I love you guys.
Thomas J. Yeah.
I didn't hear anything either of you
Happy
said.
New Year. And check out Thomas J. Brown. You'll have to do your filtering through some of his stuff. But he ran Borderland, which was Eric Dollard and all those crazy people doing their scientific electric experiments. But he filters through a whole lot of scientific research right up until like 1967.
He's very hard to listen
on like all this sort of stuff.
He's really hard to listen to. Now, granted, maybe I was just being a scatterbrain today.
You got to find.
I did try. I tried hard, and I was just like,
yeah, no, you.
He was he's.
You got to find the one that's not with Sasha Stone. Because in that one, he's actually that's all he's doing, D, is talking about that stuff. Whereas you find a couple of other talks and he's talking about what they did at Borderland and all the people that he's gone and met and hung out with and got to study their stuff, and they've done experiments, and he goes through all the, like I say, these homeopaths and these alchemists that were running all these tests and bits and pieces on it. I'll see if I can find out the names of them before tomorrow.
Okay. Cool. Okay, guys, I love you. Happy New Year. And I have to go to bed.
Same to you.
Night, night.
Yeah.
Bye.
Have fun.
Bye, guys.
Night.
Bye, then.